Joining us now live here on Radio Row at the Fair Conference, Congressman from the 11th District of Pennsylvania, Republican, been on our show many times, Congressman Lou Barletta. Congressman, great to have you with us.
Morning, John. Nice to see you again.
Now, before we get into politics, amnesty, and every other thing that's going on, we understand Congress baseball practice starts tonight.
Actually starts next week.
Next week. Okay, I was a week off, and before you came on, I was chatting with Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks, who said that you had quite the arm and you were the cleanup hitter. Is that true?
Well, that was a long time ago, I think. Mo's being kind. My scrapbook looks better than I do right now. But it's a lot of fun. We practiced for almost 2 months to play one game in that stadium against the Democrats, and we raised about $350,000 for Boys and Girls Club and other charities. It's a lot of fun, but obviously there's a lot of competitive people on that field.
I would think, though, just a few, no doubt. Now, Congressman, for those of our listeners in Virginia that don't know your story, you got to Congress by way of being mayor, and you fought this amnesty battle for some time. Can you give our audience just a quick overview of that?
Sure. I was mayor of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, for 11 years. Hazleton's 2,000 miles away from the nearest southern border, so it's not a town that you would think would have an illegal immigration problem. But we did. Our population grew by 50%, which is a huge growth for a city.
Sure.
But our tax revenue stayed the same. So it became very difficult to provide public services to a city that was growing like that. And to show you how fast it grew, in the year 2000, the budget for English as a second language in the Hazleton Area School District was $500. 5 years later, it was $1.5 million. And it was during that time our crime rate began to increase. We had more and more violent crimes. And it was
in Hazleton.
In Hazleton. And this was a town that might have one murder every 7 years. And
right.
The 6 years in between, everyone talked about that one murder. It's
right.
that kind of town. Seniors like to sit on their porches, and kids can ride their bikes all over town. So we began seeing more violent crimes. And it was during the investigation of those crimes that we found many times people that were involved were in the country illegally. We came to the conclusion we've got an illegal immigration problem for whatever reason. I came down to Washington in December of 2005 to meet with the Department of Justice to ask for help. Literally, our budget couldn't withstand what was happening. Our crimes were increasing, and I needed help. And they were great. They brought in all these experts to talk to me, and at the end of the day, I got a nice coffee mug. I got a lapel pin.
Nice.
I got a pat on the back, and they showed me my way home.
And that's it?
That was it. A few months later, May 10th, 2006, a day I'll never forget, a 29-year-old father of 3 young children, Derek Kishline, while he was working on his pickup truck, had some words with the head of the Latin Kings, Pedro Cabrera, who was in the country illegally, had been arrested 7 times before he came to Hazleton, left go each time. Pedro Cabrera went in his car, got a gun, stuck it in between the eyes of Derek Kishline and shot and killed him. We spent half of our yearly budget in overtime in the police department on that one homicide, and I had to sit with Mr. and Mrs. Kishline, Derek's mom and dad, and try to explain to them why this man was still in the country. And I had enough. Enough was enough. If the federal government wasn't going to do anything, I took an oath to do that. I created the first law in the country that would punish businesses that knowingly hired illegal aliens and landlords who would knowingly rent to. I was sued by illegal aliens. The ACLU came in, the judge put a restraining order on the city. 36 lawyers from the ACLU defended illegal aliens against the city of Hazleton. The illegal aliens had asked the judge if their identities could be kept confidential, which he granted. We weren't allowed to ask their names. They then asked if they could be excused from coming to the trial because they were in the country illegally and they didn't want to go to a federal courthouse out of fear of being deported. I never saw our accusers. Illegal aliens were given more rights than you or I or any American citizen
unbelievable
would be given. I vowed I would fight this all the way to the Supreme Court, although we had no money.
So how did you raise it?
Well, every time I did an interview, I created this little website called Small Town Defenders, and I asked people for help. Not thinking that anyone would care much about Hazleton, Pennsylvania, but it was amazing what happened. We literally had bags after bags after bags of checks from people all over the United States, every state, including Hawaii and Alaska, $5, $10, $20 denominations. I remember getting $7 from a veteran who said, "Mayor, keep fighting. This is all I have in my wallet." Another senior citizen, 88 years old, he had been saving quarters his whole life. He told his daughter where the quarters were, and he said, "Send them to the mayor." I realized that this problem was not only in Hazleton. This was a problem that was happening all around the United States. So we did fight it. I raised $500,000 to defend ourselves, although the ACLU didn't want a penny from the illegal aliens who were suing us. They want $2.8 million from the city of Hazleton to teach them a lesson, to teach our city a lesson and any other city around America. We lost the case in district court. I appealed to the Third Circuit Court in Philadelphia. We lost again. I appealed to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, the state of Arizona used the business portion of my ordinance. They were sued, went to the Supreme Court, and they won. The Supreme Court took the Hazleton case, sends it back to the Third Circuit based on their decision with Arizona. We felt a victory.
Vindicated. Absolutely.
Third Circuit Court rules against us a second time.
Again. Unbelievable.
In the meantime, Fremont, Nebraska uses the Hazleton Ordinance, and they win in the Eighth Circuit. The Supreme Court refuses to hear the Hazleton case again. It's the end of the road. So the Hazleton law is legal in the Ninth Circuit. It's legal in the Eighth Circuit. It's just not legal in Hazleton. It was very disappointing, especially when the Supreme Court, you would think, would not want a patchwork of federal laws.
Right.
However, that's where we are. The people back home realized, and this is interesting because, especially with the presidential election, people say, well, the consultants around here say, listen, you can't stand strong against illegal immigration or we'll never get the Hispanic vote.
Is that true?
It's not true at all, and I'm a perfect example why it's not true. My city was over 40% Latino. I won with 90% of the vote because the Hispanics in my town who came here for a better opportunity, who came
here legally, who followed the rules.
Followed the rules, understand what I'm saying. I want them to earn more money. I want their children to have a better education. How are we helping them when we make them work harder or we let someone come in and take their jobs away from them? So it's an issue that's, I don't need to be briefed on this issue. I've lived it. And I come to Washington. I'm on Homeland Security. And now I realize, coming with a perspective of what this means to small towns in America, I also see the threat to our country and our national security. So it's at the top of the list on things that I'm fighting.
Absolutely outrageous. You're a two-term congressman, representative, and you come from when I looked at the 11th district, Obama carried that 2 times by pretty hefty margins. How does a conservative win there?
Stand up for what I believe in. It's not about party, it's about people, and I'm willing to fight, and I did as a mayor. When the pressure came from all over the country, I didn't back down because I knew what I was right. I knew I was right. We're not rolling up the welcome mat to people. We're just saying there's a reason you need to come through the front door. There's a reason we have to follow the rule of law. That's what made this country so great.
Right.
And Democrats and Republicans and independents understood that. Those that knew me understood that, I wasn't doing this because I wanted to get on Lou Dobbs or any other show. I was doing this because I'm standing up for the working American. We have immigration laws for 2 reasons: to protect our national security and to protect the American worker. And it seems that we've lost those principles here in Washington where many are afraid to stand up for the American worker and to say, listen, you can't come here and just take a job away from Americans because you want a better life. We'll give you that life, but we have rules and laws and a process for good reason that you need to follow. We don't know who's in this country.
I mean, it's amazing. I want to go back. We've got about 8 minutes. I got a lot to cover. I just want to go back to what you did, Congressman Barletta, in Hazleton, because from the way you've just outlined it to us, and I've heard this story several times, it's always perplexed me, is that all you did was follow existing law. There's a law that says you can't rent your home to somebody who's here illegally. There's a law that says you can't hire somebody to work in your manufacturing plant that's here illegally without paperwork. So all you tried to do was enforce the Hoss, how'd you lose?
Well, we don't know how and actually we didn't lose because it is legal in the Ninth Circuit. It is legal in the Eighth Circuit.
Just not the Third
Circuit just got it wrong.
It's ridiculous.
And if we were able to continue, and if I was still mayor, I would not stop until the Supreme Court heard this case again. But we paved the way for other cities. And listen, we did not preempt federal laws. We didn't make up our own federal laws. It's already illegal to harbor illegal aliens. It's already legal to hire unlawful workers. And what municipalities and states have the right to do, and this is the window of opportunity that I used in the ordinance, we can regulate business license. So what we did is, if you violate federal law by hiring an illegal alien, we're going to suspend your business license because we have that right to do so.
Right.
So the law was crafted in a way that we felt allowed us to protect ourselves, since the federal government won't protect us. And unfortunately, we got in a bad court. We got in a third district where we just could not win, and we simply ran out of money and ran out of time. But it did pave the way for others who saw our fight and tried to follow.
Congressman Barletta, let's get to Barack Obama's what I think is illegal amnesty now. We have a stay from that judge in Texas, but it's kind of scary when you're relying on the judicial system as you've just outlined. What happens? How do we stop this? Can we just run out the clock?
Well, thank goodness for the judge in Texas.
Yes.
Because
Judge Hainan.
Because we struck out here in Washington, and I was very vocal. Actually, I wrote part of the bill that would defund the president's illegal executive action. Now, when we talk about that, many go back to November 20th, his executive amnesty, but it goes beyond that. It goes much further than that, John. It goes back to DACA, Deferred Action for Children, and it goes before that.
Right.
It goes to the Morton memos from 2011. John Morton was a director of ICE, and through a memo, and this is many times what this administration does, through a memo, gave direction to ICE agents of that they could not enforce immigration laws to certain categories of people that are in the country illegally. Basically, where we're at right now, if you're stopped and you just tell somebody you've been brought here as a child, that's the end of it. You can't even investigate this, whether it's true or not true. This is clearly an open-door policy. I have talked to both Secretary Napolitano and Secretary Jay Johnson and asked this question. When you talk about a pathway to citizenship, everyone, and something else, John, never trust anyone who's part of a gang. We've had a couple gangs here in Washington that want comprehensive.
The Gang of Eight.
Yeah.
The Gangster of Eight,
anything
yes.
with a word gang makes
Yes.
me a little nervous.
Gang of Six, Gang of Eight.
But I asked this question. So when you talk about a pathway to citizenship, are we going to be doing face-to-face interviews when we're doing the background checks of these individuals? And the answer is no, we're not. So basically, all you need to do is send in your documentation, which can be fraudulent and many times is, and somebody here in Washington is going to look at it and say, oh, it looks good, and stamp it. Listen, terrorists want two things, and it's in the 9/11 Commission report, very clear. Everyone should get one of this report and read it, because Congress passed it and the president signed it, and they've ignored it ever since. It said terrorists want two things. One, they want to be able to get into the United States. Two, they want to be able to stay there until they complete their mission. They don't care if they're citizens or not. A terrorist doesn't care if he's a citizen or not.
They just want to
wants
complete
to
their
blow
mission.
something up.
Right.
And we're assisting them by using this. My question always is, you always hear the story of those that are here illegally that aren't trying to harm anyone. They're just trying to provide for their family, and that's true in many cases. But how do you separate salt from sugar? How do you separate the terrorist, the gang member, someone who's had many crimes in the past? How do you separate that? And are we okay? Are we okay with that? Are we all right with people just walking into this country, especially when ISIS pledged to raise their flag over the White House, and now there's reports that they're 8 miles from El Paso in a camp? I'm not. And I don't want to come on your show and say, we should have, but we didn't. Our borders are still open. We're talking about a pathway to citizenship to millions of people we don't know anything about. And who's standing up for the American people?
No one.
And the national security of our country.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's the basic thing. You outlined the whole story. In Hazleton, where the American Civil Liberties Union came in with 37 lawyers. Who's just standing up for the average worker trying to make ends meet, going back and forth and competing for a job? Now we're funding them through tax dollars. Now, what about this 3,800 illegal criminals that just got released into the middle of the road? What is up with that?
Well, again, if we can't deport a criminal alien.
A criminal
alien. Many of them. There was over 100 and some murders involved with these criminals. This isn't just running stop signs.
And they were just out in the street.
I believe it was 38,000. Actually,
yeah, I'm sorry. Did I say
3,800?
38,000 just
criminal
let
aliens
out
were left back into our neighborhoods.
Unbelievable.
So if we're not even, so anytime you hear that, we're going to do background checks and we're going to deport the bad people, that's hogwash. All they want to do is they want new voters, they want cheap labor, whatever the reason is. It's not good for America. It's not good for the American worker or our national security. I'm going to continue to fight as hard as I can because I worry more now than I ever did. As a mayor of a small town, I was just trying to protect the people in that community. But now I see the threat all over America, and it appears many here are asleep at the wheel, whistling past the grave, and hopefully we don't have another September 11th.
All right, we're out of time. We want to thank Congressman Lou Barletta for being with us, sharing his story today. He represents the 11th District of Pennsylvania, former mayor of Hazleton, and he is leading the fight to curtail this ridiculous amnesty and open borders that we have. He represents a Democrat district that was carried by President Obama 2 times. He keeps winning. Thanks for being with us.
Anyone who wants to follow me can follow me on LouBarletta.com and see what trouble I'm starting.